My memory of the night I had a stroke is a short memory. As I remember it, I had a terrible migraine, and then the next 2 weeks are blank. My therapist said this might be my brain trying to save me from trauma. I appreciate my brain doing that. Unfortunately, for Candace and the people we were living with, it's not blank. That night, I was complaining about a migraine, and I was moaning and groaning, and I was just uncomfortable. Candace thought I was being dramatic, but it felt different than the other migraines I've had. Candace says she got dressed in like 30 seconds. I thought she was trying to brag about how quick she got dressed, but that's not what she's doing. She's trying to paint a picture of how quickly I deteriorated. She started to get dressed as soon as I said I needed to go to the hospital, and 30 seconds later, I couldn't move. At that time, we lived with our friends Joe and Callie McGavin, and so she ran upstairs for help. Candace calls for Joe and Callie to come downstairs, and Joe tells Callie to call 911. Joe sits me up in hopes that it'll kind of get me jump started, like when a parent is helping their child get dressed and they put their child's arm through the hole first, and then they try to get them to do it on their own. But still nothing. I couldn't move. I couldn't even sit up on my own. I kept falling over. Callie started to clear space for the paramedics and then ran outside so she could wave them down and guide them in. I was talking still, and Candace says I kept apologizing for my weight and saying I love her. While waiting for the paramedics, I told them I was going to throw up, so they moved me to my side so I wouldn't throw up on myself. At this point, I'm still talking, but I'm making less sense. I'm trying to make as much sense as I can, but I'm losing my vocabulary. The last thing that Candace remembers me telling her that night is that she was the perfect strawberry. I've never called her a strawberry. If she were a strawberry, though, I like to think she's the perfect one. She says my speech wasn't slurred, it just didn't make any sense. She was trying to keep me talking until the paramedics got there. When I did stop talking, she would squeeze my hand and I would squeeze back, and that's how she knew I was still there. Talking just took a ton of effort. Candace struggles to continue telling me the story. It's obvious that revisiting that night isn't easy. So I say we don't need to continue. I am free from the horror of that night. I can't remember anything past having the headache. My wife and friends aren't, though. I think it's best that I not ask her to relive that. I was born with an arteriovenous malformation, or an AVM for short. There's no real reason for what causes an AVM. It's not passed down or anything. From what I understand, they just exist in your brain, or they don't. For most people, they don't. AVMs aren't usually discovered unless they're being looked for. I went 32 years without a reason to look for it. Then on September 7th, 2020, the AVM in my brain burst and started to bleed. The bleeding then caused a hematoma to form. A hematoma is solid swelling of clotted blood within the tissues. In December, I had surgery to remove the AVM from my brain, and they were able to remove about 90% of the hematoma. They didn't remove it completely because it would have been too risky. I'll have to go in periodically to have it checked out, but the doctor is very hopeful that it shouldn't be a big deal. I completed physical therapy first, which was a surprise to me. Before the stroke, I was so out of shape that I would have thought this to be the hardest. Having a health scare serves as good motivation to get your health together. I've lost 60 pounds since the stroke and just overall feel better physically. I finished occupational therapy next and I returned to work at Jade Bloom. I work 3 days a week, 4 hours a day, and I hope to be able to up that a little bit soon. Work has been good for me. Sitting at home alone for 8 hours while others worked was getting rough. I just finished my last speech therapy a couple weeks ago. This is where I felt like I took the biggest hit. Speech therapy is more than being able to talk, it's about the brain processing things. And I can feel the difference. I can feel it taking longer for me to process things. I'm emotionally and mentally doing great. And then there are times where it's terrible. That's new. My highs are very high and my lows are very low. Before the stroke, I kept a lot in and would try to muscle through it on my own. I don't do that anymore. This stroke has taught me how important it is to have people. I'm no longer afraid to ask people for help when I'm mentally struggling. Every moment feels more full. I don't feel like I'm chasing anything really. I'm just enjoying the moments I have now because I'm surprised to be here. I remember the moment I knew something wasn't right and thinking I wasn't going to make it. Here I am though. Every moment I experience is one I almost lost, good or bad. At least I'm here experiencing it. I don't know if it sounds too hippy dippy, but that's how I feel. I am still alive, and I love being alive. Hey Google, turn Tyrone's light on.